The sky above the ruins of New York was not blue anymore. It was a constant, sickly shade of gray, blocked by the massive hulls of the Vorg ships hovering in the atmosphere. Down on the ground, the air smelled like burning metal and ozone. Mark stood in a long line of workers waiting for his daily ration. He wore a dirty gray jumpsuit with a number on the chest. The number was 743. That was who he was now. Not a man with a past, just a number in the system. Around him, thousands of people moved like robots. They were tired, hungry, and broken. For 50 years, humanity had lived under the thumb of the Vorg Empire. The Vorg were huge creatures, standing over 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like dark armor. They thought they were the greatest race in the galaxy. They thought humans were small, weak, and stupid. They called Earth a protectorate, but everyone knew it was a prison. The humans were slaves, digging in the mines and building ships for their alien masters. Mark looked up at the sky. He was not really looking at the ships. He was looking for a signal. He adjusted the heavy metal cuff on his left wrist. It looked like a standard tracking bracelet the Vorg used to monitor workers, but Mark knew better. Lisa had fixed it. Lisa was a genius. She used to be a physicist before the invasion. Now she worked in the scrapyards picking through broken machines. But she was also the leader of the resistance, a secret group of humans planning to fight back. "Keep your head down, 743, a Vorg guard shouted. The guard's voice was like grinding stones. He held a long energy whip that hummed with a dangerous purple light. The Vorg did not speak English well. They used a translator box on their chests, but the tone was always full of hate. Mark lowered his eyes. "Yes, master," he said softly. He hated the words, but he had to say them to survive. He moved forward in the line and grabbed his food pack. It was a small block of green nutrient paste. It tasted like dust, but it kept you alive. He took the pack and walked toward the worker transport hover bus. He sat in the back, next to an empty seat. A few minutes later, Lisa sat down next to him. She looked small and fragile, with grease on her face and her hair pulled back tight. "Did you sleep?" Mark asked quietly without looking at her. "Not much," Lisa whispered. "The jammer is ready. We just need to activate it." Mark nodded slowly. Today was the day. They had planned this for years. The Vorg thought humans were too scared to fight. They thought the spirit of humanity was dead. They were wrong. The transport bus flew over the city. New York used to be a city of tall glass towers. Now it was a city of rubble and mines. The Vorg had stripped the buildings of metal and glass to build their own fortresses. They turned Central Park into a massive processing plant. The bus landed near the main gate of the plant. Mark and Lisa got out and joined the crowd of workers walking into the factory. Inside the factory, it was loud. The noise of crushing rocks and smashing metal filled the air. Mark walked to his station. His job was to sort the valuable minerals from the waste rock. It was boring work, but it gave him time to watch. He watched the Vorg commanders walking on the metal bridges above. They walked with pride, laughing and pointing at the humans below. Mark saw Tom across the room. Tom was a big man, lifting heavy crates that required 2 men to carry. Tom caught Mark's eye and gave a tiny nod. Tom was ready. Mark looked for Rachel. He saw her near the medical bay, cleaning the floor. She was small and fast, and she knew how to fight. She nodded too. Everyone was in position. Suddenly the loud siren blared. It was not a normal work siren. It was the alarm for a quota failure. The big doors to the factory floor opened, and the Vorg sector lord walked in. He was even bigger than the guards, wearing a cloak made of red silk. He was followed by 2 robotic drones that hovered in the air. "Workers of Sector 7, the sector lord boomed through his translator. "Your production is low. The Empire is not pleased. You are lazy. You are worthless." The workers stopped working. They stood still, looking down at their feet. Fear was heavy in the room. "Because of your failure," the Lord continued, "we have decided to expand the smelting plant. We need more space. We will clear the residential sector D immediately." A gasp went through the crowd. Sector D was where the workers lived. It was where the children were and the elderly who were too old to work. "You cannot do this," an old man shouted from the front row. It was Mr. Henderson, a man who had worked in the mines for 40 years. "We have families there." The sector lord stopped walking. He looked down at the old man. "Silence, insect." "They are innocent," Mr. Henderson yelled. He picked up a heavy wrench and threw it at the alien. The wrench hit the lord's energy shield and bounced off, falling harmlessly to the floor. The sector lord laughed. It was a terrible sound. "You see? They are violent. They are animals." He raised one of his 4 hands. A purple light gathered in his palm. "Execute them all." "No." Mr. Henderson screamed, but it was too late. A beam of purple energy shot from the lord's hand. It hit Mr. Henderson. There was no pain, no time to scream. The old man just vanished, turned into dust in a second. The lord turned his hand toward the crowd of workers. "Panic," the lord said coldly. "Let them panic." But the crowd did not run. They did not panic. Mark stood up straight. He looked at the ashes on the floor where Mr. Henderson had been. Something inside Mark broke. It was not fear. It was a cold, hard rage. He looked at Lisa. She was terrified, but her hand was on her wrist cuff. "Now," Mark whispered. Lisa pressed the button on her wrist, high above the earth. In the secret bunker Lisa had built under the scrapyard, a machine turned on. It was not a weapon. It was a jammer. It sent a signal that went out in all directions, hitting every Vorg frequency. Inside the factory, the Vorg Lord stopped. He tried to speak to his ships in orbit, but his communicator just made a static noise. He tried to call his guards, but their comms were dead. He looked confused. He tapped his helmet. "Report." "Why is the link down?" He shouted. The guards looked at each other. Their screens were black. Their drones, which were controlled by a central AI, fell from the air and crashed to the ground. Mark smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter. "Hey!" Mark yelled. His voice echoed in the huge factory. Every human head turned to look at him. Even the Vorg Lord looked at him. "You killed Mr. Henderson," Mark said loudly. "You thought we were weak. You thought we would just cry and go back to work." The Vorg Lord stepped forward. "Stop him, guards." "Shoot him." The guards raised their weapons. But before they could fire, Tom moved. Tom didn't have a gun. He had a heavy metal pipe. He threw it like a spear. It hit the first guard in the helmet, knocking the alien down. Then Tom roared. It was a roar of pure anger. He charged the other guards. "Now." Mark screamed. "Fight back." The factory exploded into action. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Workers grabbed tools, stones, and anything heavy they could find. They swarmed the guards. The Vorg were strong, but they were slow, and they relied on their technology. Without their comms and their drones, they were confused. Rachel ran to the wall where the emergency fire axes were kept. She pulled them down and threw them to the other workers. "Cut them down," she shouted. The Vorg Lord watched in shock. He had never seen humans act like this. In his history books, humans always surrendered. They always negotiated. But these humans were not negotiating. They were fighting with everything they had. Mark ran toward the control platform where the Lord was standing. He had to get up there. He saw a ladder. He climbed fast. Behind him, the battle was raging. Humans were jumping on the backs of the Vorg guards, using their weight to bring the tall aliens down. It was a brutal, messy fight. Mark reached the top of the platform. The Sector Lord saw him. The Lord drew a long, curved sword from his back. He swung it at Mark. Mark ducked. The sword missed his head by an inch. Mark punched the Lord in the stomach. It felt like hitting a rock, but the Lord stumbled back. "You are foolish," the Lord hissed. "My fleet will bomb this city. You will all die." "Your fleet can't hear you," Mark said, dodging another swing. "We cut your line." Mark looked around for a weapon. He saw a heavy wrench on the floor, just like the one Mr. Henderson had thrown. He grabbed it. The Lord lunged forward, the sword ready to kill. Mark didn't dodge this time. He stepped inside the guard of the sword, swinging the wrench with all his strength. It hit the Lord's knee. There was a loud crack. The alien roared in pain and fell to one knee. Lisa was on the factory floor now. She was not fighting. She was typing on a holographic keyboard she had pulled from her pocket. She was hacking the factory's main computer. "I need 5 minutes." She screamed to no one in particular. Mark looked down from the platform. "Hold the line," he yelled to Tom and Rachel. "Just 5 minutes." Tom was wrestling with 2 guards. He was bleeding from his shoulder, but he didn't stop. "We got it," he yelled back. "Come on, you ugly giants. Is that all you have?" The humans were fighting with a desperation the Vorg had never seen before. They were fighting for their homes, for Sector D, for Mr. Henderson. They were fighting for 50 years of pain. Mark raised the wrench again. The Lord was trying to stand up, but his leg was broken. Mark hit the Lord's arm, knocking the sword away. Then he put the wrench to the Lord's throat. "The game is over," Mark said. The Lord looked into Mark's eyes. For the first time, the alien saw something he didn't understand. He didn't see fear. He didn't see submission. He saw a predator. He saw that humans were not the sheep of the galaxy. They were the wolves. "I am the Sector Lord," the alien gasped. "You cannot touch me." Mark leaned closer. "We just did." Behind Mark, the giant screens on the factory wall flickered. They had been showing Vorg propaganda. Suddenly the screens turned blue. Then a symbol appeared. It was an old symbol from Earth's history. It was a bald eagle, clutching arrows and olive branches. A voice came over the speakers. It was Lisa's voice, but it was amplified and strong. "People of Earth," she said, "this is the resistance. The Vorg grid is down. Their communications are cut. They are blind. We have waited 50 years for this moment. We have prepared in the dark. We have built in the silence. Today we take our planet back." In the streets outside, sirens began to wail. But they weren't Vorg sirens. They were human alarms, repurposed by the resistance. In other cities around the world, London, Tokyo, Moscow, the same thing was happening. The signal Lisa sent had awakened every sleeper cell. Mark looked at the Lord. "You called us weak," Mark said. "You called us cattle. But cattle don't bite." The Lord spat on the floor. "You have doomed your world. When the connection is restored, the Emperor will send 1,000,000 ships." Mark smiled grimly. "Let him send them. We'll be waiting." Mark tied the Lord's hands with a heavy cable. He dragged the alien leader to the edge of the platform and lifted him up, showing the captured leader to the entire factory. The fighting stopped for a second. Everyone looked up. "Look!" Mark shouted. "They bleed. They can fall." A cheer erupted from the workers. It started as a rumble and grew into a thunderous roar. It was the sound of hope returning. It was the sound of humanity waking up. Lisa ran up the ladder to join Mark. She was out of breath, but her eyes were shining. "I did it," she said. "I locked them out of the orbital cannons for 6 hours. That gives us a window." 6 hours is a lifetime," Mark said. He looked at the sea of faces below. They were no longer slaves. They were soldiers. "Tell the teams to move to the next phase. We take the armory next." Lisa nodded and began typing on her wrist computer. Mark looked back at the sky, where the Vorg ships hovered like dark clouds. They were still there, and they were still dangerous. But something had changed. The invisible leash around humanity's neck had been snapped. "All right," Mark said to himself, gripping the wrench tight. "Let's show them what happens when you step on a Volf's tail." The battle for Earth had truly begun. The silence that fell over the Vorg command center was not peaceful. It was the silence of confusion. The aliens relied heavily on their technology. They used a network called the hive mind to talk to each other, share maps, and aim their weapons. Now that network was gone. Lisa's virus had eaten it from the inside out. Mark stood on the metal bridge of the Vorg factory, looking down at the chaos below. The Vorg soldiers were running around, bumping into each other. They were shouting into their comms units, but all they heard was static. Without the hive mind telling them what to do, they were lost. They looked like giant children throwing a tantrum. They look stupid without their computers, Tom said. Standing next to Mark, Tom was wrapping a bandage around his bleeding shoulder. His face was dirty, but he was smiling. "Don't get too happy," Mark said. "They are still 8 feet tall and they have big guns. They just need to remember how to use them." Mark looked at his wrist cuff. Lisa had given him a new objective. "We need to move to the armory. If we can get the real weapons, we can hold this position against the reinforcements coming from the city." "Lead the way," Tom said. Mark signaled to Rachel. She was at the bottom of the stairs, gathering workers. "We are moving out," she shouted. "Grab anything you can use. Hammers, pipes, cutters." A group of about 50 workers followed Mark. They moved fast, running through the corridors of the factory. They knew the layout better than the aliens did. The Vorg had built this factory on top of human streets, so the workers knew all the shortcuts. They reached the heavy blast doors of the armory. There were 2 Vorg guards standing in front of it. Even without their comms, the guards were dangerous. They held their energy rifles ready. "Get down," Mark yelled. The humans dove to the sides of the hallway. The Vorg fired. Purple beams of energy scorched the walls where the humans had been standing a second before. "Tom, now!" Mark shouted. Tom stepped out from behind a corner. He wasn't holding a wrench anymore. He was holding a heavy Vorg energy pistol he had taken from a guard earlier. He fired 3 shots. The first 2 hit the guard's armor, sparking but not penetrating. The third shot hit one guard in the eye. The alien roared and fell back. The other guard panicked. He tried to reload his weapon, but his hands were shaking. Rachel saw the chance. She sprinted across the hallway, sliding on the greasy floor. Before the guard could bring his rifle up, she swung a heavy metal cutter at his knee joint. The alien crashed to the ground. 2 other workers jumped on him and held him down. "Nice work," Mark said, running to the door. "Lisa, can you open this?" Lisa ran up to the control panel next to the door. She pulled a small device from her pocket and connected it to the panel. "Give me 10 seconds. Their encryption is tough, but I'm better." The sound of heavy boots echoed from the hallway behind them. "Hurry up," Mark warned. "More are coming." "Got it," Lisa said. The heavy blast doors hissed and began to slide open. The armory was full of weapons. There were racks of energy rifles, boxes of grenades, and suits of heavy armor. The humans stared at the arsenal with hungry eyes. For 50 years, they were forbidden from touching these weapons. "Gear up," Mark ordered. "Grab a rifle if you know how to hold it. Grab ammo if you don't." The workers rushed in. It was chaotic, but they worked fast. They passed out weapons. Tom found a massive rotary cannon that usually required a mount to fire. He laughed as he picked it up with one hand. "I've always wanted one of these," he said. Just as the last human grabbed a weapon, the hallway exploded with noise. A squad of Vorg elite soldiers appeared at the end of the hall. These ones were wearing bright red armor, and they were not confused. They were angry. "Fire!" Mark yelled. The hallway turned into a war zone. The humans fired their stolen energy rifles. The beams were bright and loud. The Vorg elites took cover behind debris and fired back. The difference was immediate. The humans were still outnumbered and outgunned, but they had spirit. They didn't just hide behind boxes. They moved. They dodged. They worked in pairs. One human would shoot to keep the aliens down, while another would move to a better spot. A beam hit near Mark's head, singeing his hair. He rolled to the side and aimed his rifle. He saw a red-armored alien popping up to shoot. Mark squeezed the trigger. The beam hit the alien in the chest, burning through the armor. The alien fell. "We can't stay here," Rachel shouted. "They will bring a breacher bomb." "Fall back to the cargo bay," Mark commanded. "We need more space." The humans retreated, firing as they ran. They moved into the massive cargo bay, a room the size of a football field. It was full of shipping crates and heavy machinery. It was a perfect place for an ambush. "Lisa, can you close the doors?" Mark asked. "I can seal them, but they will cut through in 5 minutes," Lisa said, typing furiously on a portable terminal she had taken from the armory. "5 minutes is enough," Mark said. He turned to the ragtag army. "Listen to me. We need to set traps. Tom, put that cannon on the high walkway. You have the best angle. Rachel, take a team and hide behind those crates on the left. I will take the right." The humans scrambled to their positions. They moved crates to create cover. They set up piles of volatile fuel canisters near the doors. They were adapting. The Vorg fought with strict orders and formations. Humans fought with tricks. Suddenly, the doors began to glow red. The aliens were using a cutting torch to get in. "Steady," Mark whispered. He could feel his heart beating fast, but his hands were steady. He looked at the people around him. They were miners, cleaners, and engineers. But today they were warriors. The door fell with a loud crash. Smoke filled the entrance. The Vorg elites charged in, screaming their war cries. They expected to find scared humans running away. Instead, they found a wall of fire. "Now!" Mark yelled. Tom opened up with the rotary cannon. The sound was like a chainsaw tearing through metal. Hundreds of energy bolts poured down into the entrance. The first wave of aliens was cut down before they could take a step. The aliens behind them tried to retreat, but they couldn't. Their own commanders were pushing them forward. "Blow the charges!" Mark shouted. Rachel pushed a button on a remote detonator. The fuel canisters near the door exploded. A massive fireball rolled through the entrance, tossing the heavy Vorg soldiers like toys. The shockwave shook the floor. When the smoke cleared, the doorway was blocked by burning debris. The few aliens that had survived were crawling on the ground, their armor melted. The humans cheered. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. "Don't stop," Mark yelled. "Reload. They will try the side entrance." Lisa ran over to Mark, holding her tablet. "Mark, I have something. While I was in their system, I found a transmission." "What kind of transmission?" "The Vorg governor is panicked," Lisa said. "He thinks this is just a riot. He's trying to call the orbital fleet for a strike, but my virus is blocking his request." "Good," Mark said. "Keep blocking him." "That's not all," Lisa continued. "He is sending a request to the High Command. He is telling them that the food supply was poisoned and that the humans are sick. He is lying to save his own reputation." Mark laughed. "He is embarrassed that he lost control of us." "Yes," Lisa said. "But he also bought us time. The High Command won't send a full fleet if they think it's just a sickness. They will send a medical ship first? We need to be gone before that medical ship arrives," Mark said. "We can't leave the city," Tom said, walking over. He was smoking slightly from the heat of the cannon. "If we leave, the Vorg will just bomb the city to kill us. We have to take the governor out." Mark looked at the map on Lisa's tablet. The governor was in the main administration spire, a tall building in the center of the city. It was heavily guarded. "We can't attack the spire with just 50 people, Mark said. "No," Lisa said. "But we don't have to. The governor is scared. He's going to try to flee the city. He's going to the spaceport to take his personal shuttle." "The spaceport is on the other side of the river," Mark said. "How do we get there?" "The subway tunnels," Rachel said. "The Vorg don't use the underground. They hate being underground. The tunnels are dark, and they think humans carry diseases down there." "They are right," Tom joked. "We do," Mark looked at his team. They were tired, bleeding, and covered in dirt. But their eyes were bright. They had a taste of victory now, and they wanted more. "Okay," Mark said. "We move through the tunnels. We head to the spaceport. We intercept the governor before he can leave. If we capture him, we can force the fleet to stand down." "And if they don't listen?" Tom asked. "Then," Mark said, checking the power cell on his rifle, "we show the galaxy that humans are not to be messed with." They gathered their wounded and their new weapons. They moved out of the cargo bay, leaving the burning wreckage of the Vorg squad behind them. As they ran toward the subway entrance, Mark looked up one last time. The Vorg ships were still in the sky, dark and threatening. But they didn't look so invincible anymore. They climbed down into the subway tunnel. It was dark and smelled like old water and rust. Mark turned on the flashlight on his rifle. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the old tracks. "Stay close," Mark whispered. "Don't make noise." The echoes, Carrie. They moved like ghosts through the underground. Above them, the city was burning and screaming, but down here, there was only the sound of their footsteps and the dripping water. They were no longer just workers. They were a strike force. And they were hunting the most dangerous game in the galaxy. The best had arrived, and the Vorg had no idea what was coming for them. The underground tunnels were damp and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating a steady rhythm in the dark. Mark walked at the front of the group, his rifle pointed forward. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing old rusted tracks and piles of trash that had not moved in 50 years. The air smelled like mold and old metal, but to Mark it smelled like freedom. Up above, the Vorg controlled the air and the light. Down here, in the dark, the humans were in charge. Lisa walked behind him, typing on her tablet. The light from the screen made her face look pale. "We are getting close to the spaceport entrance," she whispered. "The tunnel goes right under the main runway." "Good," Tom said. He was carrying the heavy rotary cannon like it was a toy. His arms were huge and his muscles bulged as he walked. "I can't wait to see the look on their faces when they see us coming out of the ground." "Be quiet," Rachel warned from the back. "Sound travels far in these tunnels. We don't want to alert the guards before we are ready." The group moved silently. They were not the same scared workers from the morning. They were soldiers now. They had killed aliens. They had won a battle. They walked with their backs straight and their heads high. They knew that the fate of Earth was resting on their shoulders. Suddenly, Mark stopped. He held up his hand. "Stop. Everyone froze? What is it?" Lisa asked. "I hear something," Mark said. He turned off his flashlight. The group was plunged into total darkness. They listened. In the distance, there was a low humming sound. It was not the sound of a train. It was the sound of machinery. "Drones," Rachel said. "The Vorg must have sent scout drones into the tunnels to look for us." "They have heat sensors," Lisa said. "If they scan us, they will see our body heat. Can you jam them?" Mark asked. "I can try," Lisa said. She pulled a small black box from her belt. She flipped a switch and a red light turned on. "I'm broadcasting a signal that messes with their sensors. It will make us look like rats or pipes." The humming sound got louder. A small flying machine, about the size of a bird, flew around the corner. It had a red eye that scanned the tunnel. It hovered in the air, spinning slowly. The humans held their breath. They pressed themselves against the slimy tunnel walls. The drone flew closer. It stopped right in front of Mark. Mark could see the wires and metal inside it. He gripped his rifle tighter. If it found them, they would have to shoot it, and the noise would bring the guards. The drone's red eye blinked. It spun around and flew away down the other tunnel. Lisa let out a long breath. "It worked. It thinks we are just garbage." "Let's move," Mark said. "Before it comes back." They walked faster now. The tunnel began to slope upward. Soon, they reached a heavy metal grate. Mark peered through the holes. He could see the spaceport on the other side. It was a massive concrete floor, filled with Vorg ships. Small fighters were being refueled, and large cargo ships were being loaded. "There it is," Lisa said, pointing to a large, sleek ship in the center of the pad. "The governor's shuttle. It is heavily armed." "We need to get to that ship," Mark said. He looked at the grate. "Tom, can you break this?" Tom stepped forward. He didn't use a tool. He just grabbed the metal bars with his bare hands. He grunted and pulled. The metal groaned and snapped. Tom tore a hole big enough for a person to crawl through. "After you," Tom said with a grin. Mark crawled out first, followed by the others. They hid behind a stack of cargo containers near the tunnel exit. The spaceport was busy. Vorg soldiers were everywhere, marching in lines. There were also human workers here, loading boxes onto the ships. They looked tired and sad. "We can't just shoot our way in," Mark said. "There are too many of them." We need a distraction. Rachel looked around. She saw a large fuel tanker truck sitting near a tower. "If we blow that up, it will cause a lot of chaos." "Too loud," Lisa said. "The governor will just run to his ship and leave. We need to stop the ship from taking off." "I have an idea," Mark said. "We don't need to fight all of them. We just need to get to the shuttle. Tom, you take the heavy weapon and go to that control tower over there. Shoot anything that moves. Create a diversion. You got it," Tom said. "Rachel, take the rest of the team and attack the guards on the left flank. Keep them busy. And what will you do?" Lisa asked. "I'm going to get the governor," Mark said. "You come with me. You need to fly that ship." Mark waited for the signal. He watched Tom sneak toward the control tower. Tom moved like a cat, quiet and fast. Once Tom was in position, Mark tapped Rachel on the shoulder. Rachel nodded. She stood up and fired her rifle at a group of Vorg soldiers. "Attack!" she screamed. The spaceport exploded into action. The Vorg soldiers were shocked. They looked around, trying to see where the shooting was coming from. Then Tom opened up with the rotary cannon from the tower. The sound was deafening. Bolts of energy rained down on the runway, destroying equipment and sending aliens running for cover. "Go! Go! Go!" Mark yelled. Mark and Lisa ran across the open tarmac. They dodged behind crates and fuel trucks. The Vorg were confused. They didn't know where the main attack was coming from. A group of soldiers tried to block their path. Mark fired his rifle, hitting 2 of them. Lisa fired her pistol, hitting a 3rd. They kept running. They could see the governor's shuttle now. The ramp was down, and aliens were running onto it. "The governor is boarding," Lisa shouted. "Not on my watch," Mark said. He sprinted the last 50 yards. A huge Vorg guard stood at the bottom of the ramp. He raised his weapon. Mark didn't slow down. He dropped his rifle and tackled the alien. They hit the ground hard. The alien was strong, and it tried to grab Mark's throat. Mark punched the alien in the face again and again. His knuckles were bleeding, but he didn't stop. Finally, the alien stopped moving. Mark stood up and grabbed his rifle. He ran up the ramp into the ship. The inside was luxurious, with soft carpets and gold trim. There were 3 aliens left on the bridge, trying to start the engines. "Stop!" Mark yelled. The aliens turned around, surprised. One of them was the governor. He wore a red cloak and looked very angry. "You dare board my ship?" The governor roared. Mark didn't say anything. He shot the 2 guards. Then he pointed the gun at the governor. "Sit down," Mark commanded. The governor looked at the gun, then at Mark. He slowly sat in his chair. "You cannot fly this ship," the governor sneered. "It is Vorg technology. It requires a genetic key." "I don't need a key," Lisa said as she walked onto the bridge. She went to the pilot's seat and pushed the governor out of the way. She plugged her tablet into the console. "I wrote a program for this 5 years ago." The lights on the ship flickered and then turned green. The engines began to hum. "What?" the governor gasped. "That is impossible." "Get used to it," Mark said. "Lisa, get us in the air." Outside, the bat Tle was raging. Tom was still shooting from the tower, and Rachel and her team were fighting their way toward the shuttle. Mark ran to the door of the shuttle and waved his arm. "Rachel, Tom, get over here." Rachel saw him. She waved back. "Fall back to the shuttle." She screamed to her team. They ran across the runway, dodging enemy fire. One by one, they jumped up the ramp. Tom was the last one. He was running hard, carrying the heavy cannon. Vorg soldiers were chasing him. "Tom, hurry!" Lisa yelled from the cockpit. Tom reached the bottom of the ramp. He threw the heavy cannon inside and jumped in. "Punch it!" he shouted. Lisa pushed the throttle forward. The ship lifted off smoothly. It was much faster than the human ships Mark had seen. It shot up into the sky. Mark looked out the window. The spaceport was getting smaller. The Vorg soldiers on the ground were firing at them, but the ship was too high. "We did it," Rachel said, slumping against the wall. She was covered in dirt and blood, but she was alive. "Not yet," Mark said. He looked at the governor, who was sitting on the floor with his hands up. "We have their leader, but we still have the fleet above us." Lisa turned in her chair. "We have a problem. The orbital fleet is locking onto us. They think the governor has been kidnapped by terrorists." "Tell them who we are," Mark said. "I can't," Lisa said. "They are not listening to hails. They are preparing to fire." Mark looked at the view screen. He could see the massive Vorg battleships in orbit. They looked like sharks circling their prey. The governor started to laugh. "You are doomed," the governor said. "My ships will destroy you before you escape the atmosphere." Mark looked at the governor, then at the screen. He felt a strange calm. He had come too far to give up now. He remembered the tunnels, the darkness, and the years of slavery. "Lisa, can we transmit to the whole fleet?" Mark asked. "Yes, but for 10 seconds before they jam the signal." "Do it," Mark said. "And activate the secret weapon." "What secret weapon?" the governor asked, looking nervous. Lisa smiled. She pressed a button on her console. A signal blasted out from the shuttle, hitting every Vorg ship in orbit. It wasn't a message. It was a code. On the view screen, the Vorg battleships began to change. Their lights turned from blue to red. Their engines sputtered. "What is happening?" The governor screamed. He stood up, terrified. "You said Vorg technology is stagnant," Mark said. "You haven't changed your code in 1,000 years." We found a back door. On the screen, the massive Vorg ships began to turn. They were not aiming at the shuttle. They were aiming at each other. "The virus is taking over their fire control systems," Lisa said happily. "They are identifying each other as enemies." The governor fell to his knees. "No, my empire." "Your empire is over," Mark said. "We just turned your own fleet against you. Now take us to the moon base. We have a war to win." The view from the shuttle's window was terrifyingly beautiful. The blue curve of the earth was shrinking below them, but ahead, the gray surface of the moon was getting larger. It was not the peaceful moon people used to write songs about. Now it was a fortress. The Vorg had built massive bases on the surface, with deep craters turned into shipyards and weapon silos. This was the heart of their power in this solar system. Mark sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the radar screen. Red dots were everywhere. "There are too many ships," he said quietly. Lisa's fingers flew across the controls. She was sweating, but her eyes were focused. "The virus one uploaded is causing confusion in the high orbit, but the lunar base has its own separate firewall. They know something is wrong, but they don't know what." The governor sat on the floor of the bridge, his hands tied with plastic zip ties. He looked pale. "You are all dead," he muttered. "The lunar commander is ruthless. He will not hesitate to blast you out of the sky." "Shut him up," Mark said to Tom. Tom walked over and put a heavy boot on the governor's shoulder. "You talk too much for a guy who lost his planet." The shuttle shook violently. An alarm began to wail. "We are being locked onto," Lisa shouted. "A surface-to-air missile battery." "Can we dodge it?" Mark asked, gripping the armrest. "I can try," Lisa said. She pulled the control stick hard to the left. The shuttle rolled over, the stars spinning outside the window. A bright light flashed past them. The missile missed by inches. "They are firing everything they have," Rachel said, looking out the back window. "We can't land at the main spaceport. It will be a slaughter zone. Where else can we go?" Mark asked. "There is an old mining sector on the dark side," Lisa said. "The Vorg use it for storage. It has less security, but the defenses are still automated." "Take us there," Mark ordered. "Tom, get the team ready. We are going in hot." The shuttle banked sharply and dove toward the gray surface of the moon. The ride was bumpy. The gravity felt strange, lighter than Earth, making their stomachs feel funny. The shuttle skimmed over craters and mountains, dodging beams of green energy from the surface. Suddenly, the mining hangar appeared on the horizon. It was a large dome with a hole in the top. "Hold on!" Lisa yelled. She aimed the shuttle for the hole. The wings scraped the sides of the metal dome, sending sparks flying. They hit the ground hard, skidding across the floor until the shuttle crashed into a stack of crates. The engine hissed and died. Silence filled the cabin. "Is everyone okay?" Mark asked, unstrapping himself. "I'm good," Rachel said, shaking her head. Tom laughed. "That was fun." Lisa was typing on her tablet. "We are inside." But the crash tripped the silent alarm. "We have 10 minutes before the guards arrive." Mark stood up. "Let's move." They dragged the governor out of the shuttle. The mining hangar was huge and dark. It was filled with large containers and mining trucks. The air was cold and thin. They wore their breathing masks tightly. "Which way to the command center?" Mark asked. Lisa pointed to a heavy door at the far end of the hangar. "Through the service tunnels. It will take us straight to the main tower." They moved fast. Mark led the way, with Tom covering the rear and Rachel guarding the sides. The governor stumbled between them, looking around fearfully. They reached the service door. It was locked. Rachel stepped forward with a device she had taken from the Vorg armory on Earth. She placed it on the lock. It spun and clicked. The door slid open. They entered a long, white corridor. The gravity here was regulated to feel like Earth, which made walking easier. But the silence was heavy. "Stop," Mark whispered. He held up his fist. They froze. Down the hallway, a squad of Vorg soldiers was marching toward them. They hadn't seen the humans yet. "There are too many to fight in the open," Rachel whispered. "We have to hide," Mark said. He looked around. There were no doors, only alcoves with pipes. "Get behind the pipes." They squeezed into the alcoves just as the Vorg soldiers turned the corner. The heavy metal boots of the aliens clanged on the floor. Clank, clank, clank. The sound echoed in the hallway. Mark held his breath. He pressed his back against the cold wall. He could see the aliens through a gap in the pipes. They were walking slowly, scanning the area with their red eyes. The governor tried to peek out. Tom grabbed him and pulled him back. The soldiers stopped right in front of Mark's hiding spot. One of the aliens sniffed the air. "I smell something," the alien said in its deep, gravelly voice. "Fear." The other aliens raised their weapons. Mark knew they were caught. He looked at Tom and nodded. It was time to fight. Mark jumped out from behind the pipes first. He fired his rifle, hitting the lead alien in the chest. "Now!" he screamed. Tom roared and charged out, swinging the heavy rotary cannon like a club. He smashed it into the next alien, knocking it into the wall. Rachel and the rest of the team opened fire. The narrow hallway filled with laser beams and smoke. It was a chaotic fight. There was no room to maneuver. It was close-quarters combat, brutal and fast. Mark punched an alien in the face using his rifle, but as a hammer. Rachel stabbed another with a combat knife. In less than a minute, it was over. 6 Vorg soldiers lay dead on the floor. The humans were breathing hard, checking for wounds. "We can't stay here," Mark said. "The noise will bring more." They stepped over the bodies and kept running. The service tunnels led them to a large elevator. Lisa hacked the panel, and the doors opened. They piled inside, and the elevator shot up. The doors opened to reveal the command center. It was a massive room with a glass ceiling looking out at space. In the center of the room was a raised platform with a large chair. On the chair sat the lunar commander. He was even larger than the governor, with scars all over his face.